On my way back from Hitzacker, crossing the River Elbe. At Hitzacker I met my friend Dirk, a good old friend, Dirk Hagedorn, who is a fellow swordsman and instructor for historical swordsmanship. And Dirk told me that in Hitzacker, which is located at the River Elbe, there's a little museum, and in that museum they have a couple of swords. And he got in touch with the curator of that museum and asked if we could have access to these swords and document them, examine them, and take a close look at them. And I'm just on my way back and have examined a wonderful Type 12 sword with a fantastic crossguard, which I like a lot. A very plain, very simple sword, but a really nice one. And there's another one waiting, but I have all the material with me. I've recorded a lot of video footage and some photos, and of course I did my usual tracing of the sword, and Dirk and his kids helped me to measure out the sword, so we thoroughly documented that weapon, and I'm sure you will enjoy it too. So I'm here at the Archaeological Museum in Hitzacker with my good old friend Dirk Hagedorn, researcher and Fechtbuch expert of world renown, and a good old friend of mine. And Dirk told me that in Hitzacker there are three very interesting swords, and we're going to take a look at these swords. In fact, we've already measured them out, and now we're going to present them to you in video. So this sword that he's holding here is a single sword, a one-handed sword of Type 12. You can see that if you show me the blade please, you can see that the fuller runs out at the last fifth of the blade, and it's a very shallow blade in cross-section, which renders it Type 12, I'd say. The blade was found in the River Elbe, and we think that one mark on the blade shows where the power shovel actually hit the blade. If you turn it around, then you can see that there's a mark. So this mark was probably left by the power shovel. Fortunately, the blade was not broken in two, which happens quite often with river finds. Now, as you can see when you look at the hilt and Dirk holding that sword, the hilt is relatively long for a single sword. So this sword was probably made to be used with mail mittens, for instance. And it sports a disc pommel with chamfered edges. And if we look at it in profile, we can see that it tapers towards the top. So that's quite typical for many original swords, that in profile pommels are actually much slimmer towards the top than at the very base. Talking about the base of the pommel, if you take a look at the opening where the tang enters the pommel, these openings are usually oversized. I was told by sword makers that this is a natural effect of creating this opening, this cavity for the tang to enter the pommel and to be peened over the pommel. If we look at the top of the pommel, so if you just show us where the tang is being peened over the pommel, peened very, very nicely, you can still see the tang protruding a little bit. Likewise with the crossguard, if we look at it, the openings in the crossguard, they seem to be oversized too. This is why the crossguard is loose today. We think that this is due to the fact that at this time, so this sword is probably late 13th century, possibly early 14th century, at this point swords were made in greater quantities, and we would probably have various craftsmen who are part of the sword making manufacture, and there likely were craftsmen who were specialists in making crossguards. So the crossguards were not manufactured for one particular blade, but could be used on various blades. So if you turn the sword around, Dirk, so we can look no, the other way with the point to the top, so we can look at the crossguard cavity, the bottom side of the crossguard. Yeah, here you nicely see this boat-shaped opening, and this is completely oversized if compared to the blade. So you see there's a lot of room on either side, and that's quite typical. In fact, many swords that are earlier, so from the 12th century or even the 11th century, a lot more consideration was given to the fit of the crossguard. So oftentimes there's a snug fit, but you don't see that on 13th or 14th, leave alone 15th century swords, or very, very rarely. If you're interested in some stats on this sword, of this sword, then please visit my Patreon pages. I have provided a link below this video frame, and that will take you directly to an article on this sword, and there are a couple of photos, detailed shots with stats and specific information on the sword that you may enjoy and that you might like to have. And thank you very much for your support via Patreon.